The title of this message is going to be, Does God Still Heal? And I talked about it last week. I really wanted to get into this today. And honestly, something that you guys need to consider as you run into people that that might be sick or have some problem. I mean, please, take the time to invite them over. I really feel like that's something God's really put on my heart. And if you know people, or if they're not going to come over, tell them to go on there and watch this message. I mean, this should be a really good message for them. I was reading this morning when I was getting ready. I like going on the internet and looking up stuff, reading about other people and things people say. And I was reading this guy. Have you heard of John MacArthur? John MacArthur or something? I mean, he's an okay guy. I mean, I don't agree with everything he says, and this is one of the things I don't. But I was reading it. He had a criticism on divine healing, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't know, take the time out to criticize divine healing. But anyways, and he said something, and the whole time was basically he was just talking down what he called faith healers and all these other people. And some of the examples he was using were kind of like, it would kind of like me be, saying that all Germans are bad and then giving you the example of Hitler. I mean, it's like, okay, come on. All Germans aren't like Hitler, right? And that's what kind of, you picking the worst of people and try to, but, I mean, some of the things, he had, a problem with, healing, and he basically, that healing is not for today, and, God did that back then, and there was a reason for it, but it's not now. And then he tried to criticize all these different people. But one of the things he said, and this is what stuck in my mind. He said this. He goes, I like the idea, though, of divine healing. He goes, wouldn't it? He goes, I can imagine how wonderful it would be to be able to pray for someone and see them healed. Or how I can go into a hospital and just lay my hands on people and see them get healed. He goes, how wonderful that would be. But that's all just a fairy tale. And that's kind of where he went with it. That's all just... And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, well, you got something here. Yes, that is wonderful. Yes, and he's talking about how horrible it is when he's seeing, mothers whose babies died, in their arms, and, seeing people going through all this horrible stuff and family members dying and all this stuff. And he's talking about how horrible it is and how much it hurts his heart. And I'm thinking, you got the right thing here, but you're going about it all wrong. You think that God doesn't want to heal. You think that God doesn't want to do these amazing things. That it's just a special situation. And I'm reading this, and then I go on to something else, and I'm reading this other article from a non-Christian perspective. And this is a guy who's writing this article about how there's no such thing as divine healing because it's just a part of evolution. So basically, when these things happen to people to where they're miraculously healed, it's just evolution working in their body, or like, the whole survival of the fittest. Our bodies are naturally... will do these supernatural things, I guess. I don't know how that works, but and he was saying this, and he had this whole drawn out thing about it, and that it's not supernatural, it's just evolution at work. And one of the guys that posted on it, it was a Christian guy, and he basically said, he goes, this is all I know. He said, my daughter, when she was, before she was born, the doctors had said that she had cancer in her chest, and they were watching this cancer develop, and it was actually making it to where her heart wouldn't develop. She had this tumor in her chest, or something like that, tumor in her chest. And they said, well, we could go in and operate, but it could cost the life of your wife and the life of your baby. It's way too dangerous. We don't know what, I can't tell you what to do here. And the doctors left him with the choice. And he said, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to pray and believe that God's going to heal my daughter. And he said, what was amazing is, he had all of the top specialists involved in this thing, and they were watching this baby in the womb, and they had all the x-rays and did all this stuff. I mean, I don't know, he went all this medical terminology, I didn't really understand it. All this different stuff that they were watching this baby, and they said every single time they'd go into the doctors, next week, the doctors watched this tumor just slowly go away. And he said, to the point to where it was totally gone. The baby was, and they said, well, you got to understand, when she's born, she's probably going to have a lot of complications. There will be all these problems. You got to be ready for it. She was born healthy without any problems. And he just basically said, he goes, I don't understand all the ins and outs. He goes, I understood the medical side of it. He goes, I understood what the doctors were telling me. He goes, I understood that there was nothing they could do but a surgery that could possibly cost my wife's life and my baby's life. He goes, so I knew all I could do was trust that God could heal my baby, and that was it. And he said, she was healed. And he said, and the way he said it was awesome, because he said, all I know is that my baby's fine now. You might have all these other little things that you have to say, but the bottom line of it is, I have a perfectly healthy, and at this point he was right, and she's 4 years old, the perfectly healthy 4-year-old, daughter. And I thought, I was, the sad thing is, this is what really stuck in my mind, is that so many people have a problem with God healing them for all these different reasons. Like I said, you got the non-Christian that says, it's all evolution, whatever. You got the Christian who basically says God doesn't do that. But then you've got a man whose baby was dying and had no other hope. And what do we have to offer? Just that, evolution's, taking its course and survival of the fittest. I mean, come on, how does that make you feel better? Or even worse, well, God's doing that because he's trying to teach you a lesson. I mean, do you see the two sides of that and how horrible it is? I think, and this is what I'm getting at here, and this is basically my criticism on divine healing, it makes more sense to believe that God heals than it does to believe all these other ideas. Because they're monstrous. They're horrible. They're a disgusting way to even think. That God, wants to do this to somebody, or God doesn't, that God's just trying to teach you a lesson, or God, he doesn't do this anymore, and you just got to suffer it through, and just deal with it. A God that, honestly, that's a God I don't want any part of, because it's a God that's not involved in my everyday life. So many times, and this is what I see so much in Christianity, is that so many times we want God, like the idea of God out here. He's this guy that's out here that basically, when I die, I get to go to heaven. That's it. He's my get out of hell free card, basically. Here he is, out here, and that's all. That's it. That's who he is. He doesn't help me with my kids. He doesn't help me with my marriage. He doesn't help me with my job. He doesn't help me with my bills. He doesn't help me definitely with my health. He doesn't help me with any of these things. He's just God out here. And I got to make sure I, say my prayers and eat my vitamins and go to church every now and then, but, he's God. He doesn't deal with all my little problems. And that's wrong. That's sad. Because the God that I serve is a God that wants to be involved in every area of my life. Everything. And it's funny, I was thinking about this morning when I was getting ready for my message, and how, when you care about something, and when you love something, you want to be involved in every little thing of it, And now I'm going to go from being totally spiritual to not spiritual. Like, for instance, I love comic books. I love listening to people talk about comic books. I like to get involved. I like to know the people who write the comic book stories. I could sit down and have a conversation with why I think so-and-so is a better writer than this person. And most people are here and think, man, that's geeky. That's not. But when you like something, you like every little aspect of it. You get involved in it. It's something that you take pride in. You like it. You can sit there and have a conversation. Sometimes I've sat there and listened to, you listen to guys that get together that like to fish, right? They'll sit there and they'll just talk on and on about the lake they went to and the bait they used and the boat they, all this stuff that, I'm going to shake my head and smile. I don't know what they're talking about most of the time. But that's what you do when you love. God loves us and wants to be involved in every aspect of our life. Every little thing. And yes, our health is important to him. Now, does God still heal? First of all, I want to start in Matthew chapter 8. And I want to say this. Whenever you want to see what God is like, you look at Jesus. And that is such an easy thing to say, but it's very, very, very true. It's so easy. You want to see what God is like, you look at Jesus. You just see it. How did he act? How did he react? What did he do? How did he live? This is how God is. You see Jesus. And when I got that revelation, I'm serious, I got some freedom in a lot of areas of my life, because I realized Jesus wasn't such a stuck-up kind of, holier than thou art guy that I think most Christians think that he should, he is, and that's how they act that way, I'm better than everyone else. I'm Mr. Spirituality here. He wasn't like that. He wasn't some out there. Sometimes I love watching Jesus of Nazareth. I love the movie. I'm not knocking it. But I love how they make Jesus. He'll be talking, and then he'll be just like looking off like this. Like, if a wheat falls in the ground, it's like he's, what? He looks crazy. He just kind of goes off somewhere. He's out there, and they're just kind of looking at him. What? This is my body. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, Jesus? But that's how they kind of portray Jesus. And I don't really, sometimes he says some crazy things, but not really crazy, you just don't understand it. But I think the thing is that Jesus, he was a normal person. He was down to earth. You could read through all of the Gospels, and if you put all of the stuff that's mentioned in the Gospels in a time frame, you probably see maybe 24 to 48 hours of Jesus' whole life. Really, you can put the whole Gospels, you could probably read them in probably a few hours. You just sat down and just read all the way through them. There's not a lot going on here. And so there was all this different time. Jesus, he spent time with these disciples. He was involved in their lives.